Okay, in this video, I want us to have a look at topic, what is it, 4.10, I need to double check, which is about the main macroeconomic aggregates, consumption, investment, savings, and their relationships. I believe it is 4.10, I'll check. Okay, so let's start by looking into consumption. Which we write and call it C, consumption. Let's start with a definition. Consumption is household spending on consumer goods. Household spending on consumer goods. A consumer good is anything that you can consume as such without transforming it into something else. Consumption is determined by many factors. Primary factor is disposable income, which is your income once you have paid your direct taxes, like income tax, and after you have received any benefits from the government. So that essentially the money that is available for consumption and saving. Clearly, the more income you have, the more consumption is. Number two, consumer confidence is also something that matters because the more confident consumers are, the more they're going to spend. If they are not confident, they will save more, consume less. Number three, interest rate. Because sometimes consumers must borrow to finance consumption. But if the interest rate is very high, it's going to be expensive for consumers to borrow, and therefore they will not be able to sustain high levels of consumption. On the other hand, another explanation is that if the rate of interest is very high, they have stronger incentives to save because it's going to be very rewarding. And in addition, wealth is also something that can matter. Of course, income determines levels of consumption, but even if you receive very low income, if your wealth is quite high, you can afford to consume at a higher levels. One reason maybe because if you already have a high wealth, you don't need to save, so you can consume more. But I would say that if you had to focus on three, I would advise you to focus on these three: disposable income, consumer confidence, the rate of interest. Okay, now how can we graph the consumption function? Consumption function. We are going to put the disposable income, YD stands for disposable income, on the x-axis, and we're going to put consumption on the vertical axis. And the consumption function is assumed to be a straight line that is upward sloping and has a constant slope. You see that the vertical intercept, the y-intercept, is positive because even if income is zero, there is a minimum level of consumption below which we can't really go. This is what we call autonomous consumption. Because even if there is no income, people might borrow to finance like the purchase of basic necessities, or they might use their past savings, that's called de-saving, to finance like basic consumption levels. Okay, so increasing, and it is assumed to have a straight line. Of course, it's not very realistic, but it just simplifies things. The slope or the gradient of this consumption function is called the marginal propensity to consume. The marginal propensity to consume is the share of the last or the additional dollar of income that you consume. So for example, if disposable income increases by 1 franc, and as a result, consumption increases by, let's say, 70 cents, then we say that the marginal propensity to consume is equal to 0.7. Here's the formula. Marginal propensity to consume is the change in consumption over the change in income. Okay, so here if income increases by, let's say, 1, and consumption increases by 0.7, well, then of course the MPC is equal to 0.7. If income increases, I'm going to take another example. If income increases by 20 and consumption increases by 15, okay, the MPC would be 0.75, which means that every additional dollar or franc of income leads to an increase in consumption by 0.75 francs. Okay. And remember, it measures the slope of the consumption function. Something that is quite similar is the APC, the average propensity to consume, which is just the ratio consumption over income, and it simply measures the share or proportion of total income that is consumed. So for example, if income is $100 and consumption is $80, then the average propensity to consume is 0.8. Pretty simple. Right, that's about it for consumption. Let's talk about saving, which is very similar, especially in terms of the determinants. Saving, which we call S. So the definition of savings would be the part of disposable income that is not consumed. Okay, because basically with your disposable income, there are only two things you can do: consume and save. So whatever you do not consume, you save it. There may be several reasons for which you save. Could be as a precautionary, as a precaution. Life is full of uncertainties, and you may want to have some money on the side to be ready in case there is a sudden need of money. Could be when there are future expenses that you can anticipate. So it's not really a risk, it's just that you know that in the future there will be something that you'll have to do. So for example, if you have kids, you know that, well, they will go to university, so you need to prepare for this type of expense. Basically, saving allows you to optimize your consumption across time. Okay, you don't have to consume everything today. You can simply choose to reallocate your purchasing power over your lifetime. That's basically the purchase or the purpose of savings. Saving is affected by the same determinant as consumption. So of course you still have disposable income. The more income people have, the more they can save, of course. You still have consumer confidence. If people are very optimistic, they will save very little. But if they are pessimistic about the future, for example, if they feel like they might lose their job, or if they feel like an economic crisis is ahead, they are likely to save more to be ready for this economic shock. And finally, the rate of interest. When you save money, the interest rate is the reward that you get. So the higher the rate of interest, the more you want to save, because you're going to get a higher reward. How do we graph the savings function? It's going to be quite similar. Same thing. This is the disposable income. This is savings. And in fact, it's going to be an upward sloping function, just like consumption, but it's going to have a vertical intercept, which means that it's only once we have achieved a minimum level of income that we can start to save. So that's saving. And below this level of income, you see that saving is negative. It's called de-saving. And that's basically when people draw on their past savings. They use their past savings to sustain their levels of consumption today. Okay. And the gradient or slope of the savings function is the marginal propensity to save. The marginal propensity to save is the change in saving over the change in income. So that's just the share of any additional dollar of income that is saved. So for example, if your income increases by $100 and you save 20 additional dollars, well, you have a marginal propensity to save that is equal to 0.2, which means that each additional dollar of income increases your saving by 20 cents. Okay, that is what it means. And we can also define the average propensity to save, which we also call the savings ratio, which is simply the fraction of that's just savings over income. So for example, if your income is $100 and you save $15, the average propensity to save is 0.50. Okay. So households save, but firms can also save, and governmental agencies, they can of course also save whatever excess of funds they have. Now, investment. The first thing that I want to tell you is that be careful with this term, because the meaning of investment is not the same in economics and is in business. In business, when we talk about investment, we are mostly talking about money, financial capital. In economics, we mostly, when we talk about investment, we are mostly referring to firms buying physical capital equipment, like machineries, factories, what we call capital goods, usually fixed capital equipment. In fact, there are several types of investment. There are 4 types of investment, but we are only going to focus on 2, basically. We're going to talk about fixed business investment. Fixed business investment, which is when firms buy fixed capital equipment, machines, factories, and so on. And the second one that's going to be important is inventory investment, which refers to changes in stocks, in inventories. It could be deliberate, it can be planned. Firms may want to increase their stocks, they may want to decrease their stocks. In that case, we will talk about planned inventory investment. But sometimes when firms, they make mistakes in their predictions, when they are too optimistic, so they produce, in terms of their future sales, they feel like they're going to sell a lot, so they produce a lot, but at the end of the day, they sell less than what they expected, so their stocks increase. That's going to be an unplanned inventory investment, positive inventory investment. On the other hand, if firms are too pessimistic regarding their future sales, if they feel like they are not going to sell very much, so they produce very little, but at the end of the day, they sell more than what they thought, so they have to draw on their stocks, so their inventory will go down. This is not something that was expected. This would be an unplanned negative inventory investment. Okay, fixed business investment is always planned. Okay, we always plan to buy more machines, more factories. It's never something that happens. We always expect it. Okay, good. Just check something. Right. So remember that difference between plan and unplanned. The determinants of investments are number 1, the interest rates. Because quite often when firms invest, they must borrow, and therefore the rate of interest reflects the cost of borrowing. Number 2, you will have business confidence. Especially in terms of their future sales, because quite often investment, the purpose of an investment is to increase the production capacity of businesses. But obviously, if firms expect that their sales will not increase much, they don't really need to increase their production capacity. It's only when firms expect that their sales will increase substantially in the future that they will feel the need to improve their production capacity, and this will trigger investment. Business confidence, spare capacity also matters. Spare capacity, because if we have large spare capacity, if there are many machines that we don't use, we don't really need to invest to produce more. We can simply use those machines that are currently idle to increase our production. It's only when spare capacity is going to be very low, when we are close to full capacity, that investment may be attractive for businesses. Okay, these are the key determinants of investment. Right, and usually when we graph investment, just like we did for consumption and savings, we usually make a very, particularly when we graph planned investment, disposable income, and that's planned investment. We usually graph it like that, so planned investment, which means that it doesn't depend on national income. It's not very realistic because it's likely that investment will increase with national income in practice, but it kind of makes sense in a sense because what determines investment is not the level of the national income itself, but it's the change in national income. That kind of makes sense, but well, in any event, this is a simplifying assumption. Okay, I think we have said everything we needed about consumption, savings, and investments separately. Now it's time to connect everything. Let me just check that everything is working because this computer has it's actually the second time I recorded this video because the first time it didn't work properly. Okay. Now we must understand why saving is always equal to investment. Remember that in an economy, any income must be spent. National income is always equal to aggregate expenditure. Any income that you have is going to be spent somehow. Remember, in fact, we said that national income is equal to total output and total spending. Okay, that's always the case. National income, let's call it Y, and that's always equal to expenditure. So if we consider a very simple model where there is no government and no rest of the world, okay, essentially the two only types of spending will be consumption, which is basically spending by household, and investment, which is spending by firms. Okay, so that's the total aggregate expenditure, and this is national income. And with income, there are only two things you can do: you can consume or you can save. Okay, so that means that Y, that's okay, C plus S is equal to C plus I, and you see that C cancels out. And you have S equal to Y. Okay, saving is always equal to investment. So that's one way to put it. But that doesn't really explain why very intuitively. So let's try to explain it slightly differently. What if, let's take the example, what if they were not equal? What if firms, let's talk about planned investment spending. What if consumption is, let's say, 100, and planned investment is 50? Okay, so that's, first, that's the how much has been spent overall in the economy. In a sec. Yeah, let's explain it differently. So I'm not very happy with the way I'm doing it right now. Let's imagine that in the economy, there is a national income that is equal to 100. Okay, so this is what households receive, basically. Remember that there are only two things they can do with their income. One part is going to be consumed, and one part is going to be saved. Let's say that consumption is 80 and saving is 20. Okay, no problem. And let's say that in this economy, firms, well, did not plan to invest this particular year. So planned investments was 0. Okay. They didn't anticipate. They don't want to buy more machines. They didn't want to increase or decrease their stocks. No planned investments done. Okay, but you see now that there is the amount of planned investment is not equal to the amount of savings. There is a little problem. In fact, what happened is that firms have produced for $100, because remember that national income is always equal to the value of output. Okay, so firms have produced for $100 of goods and services, but consumers have only purchased for $80. which means that firms have produced too much compared to what people wanted. And therefore, the value of their stocks will increase by the difference, by 20. And this is not something that they intended, of course, because the planned investment was 0. It means that there is an unplanned investment spending that is equal to 20, which reflects the fact that, well, firms have produced too much. They produced for 100, people only want to buy 80. There is no purchase of capital equipment by firms. Therefore, national income is greater than planned aggregate spending. So there is an unplanned positive inventory investment. So now if you add the planned investment and the unplanned investment, you have like a total investment that is equal to 20, which is equal to savings. Okay, so the total investment, including the unplanned investment, is equal to the to savings. We can do it the other way around, just to make sure that you understand how this works. The same thing. Let's say that in this year, firms have produced for $100 of output, so that's the value of production, but that's also how much money is going to be given to households. But what if households want to consume more? Let's say 120, perhaps by, of course, that's not their, it's more than the income that they have received in that particular year, but they may use past savings, for example, to sustain a level of consumption that is higher than national income. Let's say that they save. In that case, it's going to be no savings, okay? Because in fact they borrow. Sorry, they save, so it's a negative saving because they borrow, okay? So they clearly, in that case, they have consumed more than the income, so they have to borrow to use their past savings, so it's a negative saving. And again, to simplify, let's say that there is no planned investment, just to simplify. Let's focus on what consumers do. So I repeat, in that year, there is a value of production equal to 100. Firms have produced for $100. So national income, the income given to households is 100, but consumers, they want to consume more than their income. They want to consume 120, so they need to borrow. Borrow is a kind of a negative saving. When you add that, you get 100, of course. So, well, in that case, again, you have a problem because savings is not equal to planned investment. But in fact, what happens is that firms have not produced enough. They've produced only 100, consumers want 120. So firms will have to draw on their stocks. So that's going to be a negative unplanned investment. Negative unplanned investment spending, which is equal to negative 20 because we have to draw the minus 20 from our stocks. And in that case, you see that saving is going to be equal to investment, total investment. Okay, to conclude, even though I feel I don't really think that this is going to be something that is can be tested. Remember, we had the model that represents the Canadian cross. So here we have the aggregate expenditure, and here we have national income, which is the value of output. Now remember, we said that the value of output is always the same as the value of spending in income. So you have like this 45-degree line, which basically tells you, well, that's in that case, you have a situation where how much you have produced is equal to how much people spent. Okay, and that's always the case. We saw that in total. How much the value of output is always equal to the value of spending, always. But that's not necessarily the case for planned investment spending. So if you add everything, so remember we have consumption that was basically like this. That's the consumption function. And we have investment that is like this, right? So if you add consumption plus or planned investment, so if you add consumption and planned investment, you have something like that. That's consumption and planned investment, which is planned aggregate expenditure. I'm just going to delete these two, otherwise it's going to be a bit messy. So it's just to explain how we get consumption from time investment. So this line there basically shows you how much people and firms want to spend at any given level of income. In that case, if we take a level of output that is quite low, let's say Y1, you see that the two are not equal. People want to buy more than the value of output. Okay, remember that this shows the value of output. This shows how much they want to spend. So in that case, it means that firms will have to draw on their stocks. There will be a negative unplanned investment spending that is going to be equal to the gap. Okay, that's how much people want to spend. That's how much we have produced. So, well, we haven't produced enough. So there is a negative unplanned investment spending. So stocks will go down, and as a result, in the future, firms will say, "Oh, we haven't produced enough, so we need to produce more." Okay. On the other hand, if we are, let's say, somewhere here, split by 2, you see it's the opposite. This is how much we have produced. That's the output, okay? And this is how much people want to spend, expenditure. In that case, you see that we have produced more than what people want. So the gap here, so it means that stocks will increase because we have produced too much. So there will be a positive unplanned inventory spending that is equal to the vertical distance between the two. So firms will soon realize that they have produced too much, and therefore in the future they will reduce production. And at the end of the day, that takes us to this value, which is the equilibrium value y star, at which planned aggregate expenditure is equal to national output, so to aggregate expenditure. And so in that case, firms, there is a zero, negative, and positive, there is zero inventory investment, okay? Because how much people want to buy is exactly equal to how much firms want to sell. So in that case, stocks will remain the same, and that's what we call the macroeconomic equilibrium. Because there is no unplanned investment spending, remember that I is equal to planned investment spending plus unplanned investment spending. But in this equilibrium, there is no unplanned investment spending. Okay, so investment is entirely made of planned investment. So we can write that the planned investment is equal to savings in that case. Okay, and we can even graph it. Remember that savings looks like that. Planned investment spending looks like that. Okay, that's disposable income. This is savings and planned investment spending. So we will be there where the amount of saving is exactly equal to the amount of planned investment spending. So basically we have, this is the level of equilibrium is where the leakage saving is equal to the planned injection that we have there. This model is a bit more complex. So to summarize, of course, you need to know the definition of consumption, savings, investment. You need to know the main determinants. You need to be able to graph them. You need to be able to define and illustrate the marginal and average propensities to consume and to save. You must be able to explain why consumption and savings, why investment and savings are always equal. Probably the best way to do it is to use like a simple example with numbers. Maybe the first one is easy. This, like the Canadian cross, is maybe a bit more complex to understand, but who knows? You never know. All right, that's about it.